Hi there, micro cruising YouTubers, it's Nicola here. I wanted to talk today about one of my trips that I went on a small ship, surprise, surprise, with a company called Sea Trek Sailing Adventures. So these guys generally do the Indonesian more well-known places, as you can see on the map. We've got Bali here and the Lesser Sunda and Greater Sunda Islands. So they go a lot around here, but this trek in particular was a little bit different in that it went from Ternate, so this is the Maluku Islands, to Kendari, which is on central Sulawesi. To get there, I flew from Bali, well, to Bali, then from Bali to Makassar, overnighted, and then took the morning flight to Ternate. So it's basically the Molucca Sea, and we went all the way down there, around here, and then ended up here in Kendari. So, yeah, you're flying into Makassar mostly. That's kind of the gateway to get there. When I told an agent I was going to the Molucca Sea, she said I had to look it up because she'd never heard of it before, which I guess isn't much of a surprise. So I'm just going to show you a few photos of the trip and what we got up to, what it was about. But if you have any questions, let me know. I can do plenty of other you know, more micro trips, presentations about different elements of this trip, which are really interesting. So it's called Spice Traders, Island Tramps and Sea Gypsies. This is our vessel. It's a Finisi. These are the traditional handmade wooden boats of the Bugis and the Makassans, the two, I guess, powerhouse families that make these vessels. Now, if you've heard of the boogeyman, well, the word Bugis comes from that. So really interesting group of people, not scary people, very lovely people, but these are the shipbuilders of the world, because at that time that was the way to get around, because it's 17,000 islands. So she was called the Ombak Putih. She had 6 cabins underneath, and it's an all wooden vessel, so it's, you know, reflective of an old maritime period, and they were air conditioned, which is very welcome, and yeah, really great place to stay. And as you can see here, dinner was on deck, on this table, or on the, you know, the upper deck was a good place to relax. So there's plenty of little spaces within the small ship. And it was a real adventure, the places we went to. So the history of the region is all about the Spice Islands. So the fort that you see here, I think, was built in 1540. So it was a long time ago. So you've got the Spanish, the Portuguese, the Dutch, all fighting over this part of the world because of the nutmeg, spices, and mace and cloves that they had growing here naturally, until, of course, they managed to plant a few closer to home in the Caribbean, which they already conquered, and in the tropical regions again, and therefore it went out of favour for this part of the world. But in the early days, it was a place that people were fighting over, hence the forts made by, I think it was the Dutch or the Spaniards, maybe the Spaniards. So it really is a beautiful part of the world. This is our tour guide, that we found a little swing off the edge of what was a lake. The greens were just so lush because it's so tropical here. You can see in the background Tidore. So you've got Ternate and Tidore, the two islands. They have fought in history, but Tidore here has got this beautiful conical shaped, perfectly conical shaped volcano, and all the volcanic rock as well, which is amazing. So this is what they were fighting over. It is nutmeg, and the red thing covering the nutmeg seed is mace. So you might have heard of this. So back in the day, a gentleman would show his wealth by pulling out his own nutmeg cruncher and would crunch some over his dinner in the evening, and when he did that, he was considered very wealthy. It's crazy to think about that now, but that used to be the way. So for the nutmeg to go from this state to the dinner tables in Europe, the price went up 1,000% from every little spot on the way there. So it was very expensive to get, and so therefore a commodity, but a show of wealth as well. So just for this little nut. One of the places we went to on Ternate was this lake. Now this lake, you can't see in the photo, is fully enclosed. So what you're seeing with those very steep edges, it is all around the lake. And where I was standing was right in front of a very steep drop to go in. And I do not know how they get people out, but they obviously do. People must fall in there or whatever, but people said they saw crocodiles there. Someone was swearing they saw crocodiles there, and they don't know if they were having a lens of me, but we were quite skeptical. But it's quite amazing. I don't, you know, the greens again, there's so much green in this tropical part of the world. And Tidore with a beautiful cloud over it, I just thought was gorgeous. One of the islands we went to, this is someone's backyard. This is a working iron smouldering, if you will, factory. So they, you know, we probably called ahead, but I don't think they were really expecting us, to be honest. You know, it's not, definitely not, oh, it's 5 o'clock, the tourists are coming. None of that. These guys are working. They're probably there every day or every other day, making, as you can see, flattening this iron and probably other metals as well. But the sound, you don't get this here. I've got another video I can show you. The sound is just a rhythmic banging. There are 3 guys, as you can see on here, banging away, and it's just bang, bang, bang. To get as many hits on that thing before it goes cool and you have to put it back in the fire. The women were off to the side. You don't see that in this photo, but they were absolutely lovely. Without any common language, we managed to, feels like, have a full conversation, but also with the help of the translator. And so, yeah, it was really great to see these people working as they do every other day. And it was hot. It was hot in general, but also with that fire. Really hard workers. So again, with the forts, we can see here there's plenty of places that needed fortification, but also they had people living in there as well. So the people from Spain or Portugal, they would you know, have a camp essentially inside the walls, up high, and looking over for any particular boats that were coming in that weren't of their country. So some really interesting history of these forts. And the way to get in and out of some of these places, because there's no infrastructure, is off the side of a zodiac. So that's another thing about you know, the remoteness of this trip, was that this was one way to get ashore. And from there we did a 45-minute walk to a beautiful, and it's not fully in this photo, but a beautiful waterfall that was just, we had all to ourselves, which was absolutely stunning. And the way to get there was walking upstream. And yeah, really challenging, but really amazing trek, and well worth it. This is one island on the left that we went to that was like a tropical paradise. You could have been in the Caribbean, you could have been in Tahiti. It was absolutely beautiful and uninhabited. And another island with the right 2 photos, we had these gorgeous kids follow us around, being really interested in what we had to do, what we had to say, these strange people. But you can see here on the right, their boats are really a way of life for them with their fishing skills. Burning of cofra, or the coconut to make cofra. I think it's like a coal, used as coal, that was ever present wherever we went in these small villages. On the left here, you'll see one of the donations that Sea Trek gave to one of the local villagers who they hadn't seen in a few years, was this water filtration system. So the locals are quite happy about that, because it means the kids on the right of the photo get their clean, fresh water without any bugs in it. So it's a real problem there with dehydration and stomach issues of the kids. So it was fantastic to be part of that, and they were so happy to receive it as well. We then had a demonstration with the coconuts, opening up of the coconuts and drinking that beautiful coconut water that is electrolyte friendly, helping our own tummies and rehydrating us. And the sunsets are just amazing. I just wanted to show you a picture of the sunsets on board, were great. So we've got some kind of volcanic activity, obviously it being on the equator. and the Ring of Fire. It has these beautiful steaming pools that it's actually a river running down, and they were really hot. Some of them you could put your foot in, some of them not, but when you first stepped out you got that heat, which you think it's a sea, and then you realize it's warm water. And the kids are amazing. The kids are always, holding your hand, wanting to find out and talk to you. And the pictures you can see of the women all dressed up, that is of them doing it. This was just before they did a dance for us, so it was quite cool to have them do that. And this particular island, they hadn't had pale-faced people in 2 years. And those pale-faced people that were last there actually were the first pale-faced people to go there. So they were understandably very inquisitive. The one of the days which had one of the more populated towns with more infrastructure, we had these guys lined up for us, ready to go for our day. We went to a royal mosque, which was amazing. And the other interesting thing is that they're taking with their own smartphones selfies of you, with you, and it's quite incredible because you're there obviously to take photos of the environment you're in, but you yourself are a spectacle, which was kind of a role reversal, but also kind of cool. So people were happy to see us, and we were a bit of a curiosity. As you can see here, we're kind of nuzzling in on their swim time of the kids, because that's where they all jumped off the edge and had a bit of a swim in the afternoon, but that's us getting back on board with a bit of fanfare. One of the places we went to was a really isolated, very remote part of the world. So we had sailed down, I think, a day without seeing another populated town or village. So we were sailing a day away. Then we got into the Zodiacs and went at least 45 minutes upriver, and this was the river we went up. And then we trekked 3 hours to get to a village. And when I say a village, it's a hamlet. So this is part of the trek, so walking through very welcome, cool rivers, and going to this village of, I think there are about maybe 5 or 10 houses, and most of the people were off hunting or gathering with their farming. But this gentleman was here with a couple of younger lads, and he was 80 years old. He was the chief of the village, and he showed us his various implements that he uses to live. He'd only lived in that village. I don't think he'd ever really left the village. And he showed us one of the arrows, or some of the arrows that he uses for hunting, which actually had poison tips. So it was a bit nerve-wracking, and I stayed away from it, but it was so interesting to see these people living off the land as they have done for generations. And this is him saying goodbye to us. And he got his snakeskin instrument out, and he played and sang for us as we left, which was really touching and just fantastic to kind of experience this. And not far from there, we went for a swim in their pool. They basically had, someone said, oh, you can have a swim that way or you can go to the toilet that way. And so we went for the swim, and so we're swimming around, and it was so cool and so refreshing and lovely, and shaded as well in this beautiful stream that was coming through. And I looked downstream, and there was someone peeing in the river. That was the toilet, but it was downriver, and so that was important to note. So I'm glad we didn't get those mixed up. So yeah, really remote. And then another 2, I think we steamed it in 2 hours and 15 back, and then another 45 onto the boat. Then we got onto the boat, and then we were heading on. So very remote part of the world. Another one of the villages we went to, this is an island village, really populous actually. So these guys are still remote, but within that remoteness, they're all cramped onto this one tiny island. And you can see here, it's a little bit ramshackle, but I tell you, the kids were so happy to see us. Everybody wanted a selfie. This is one guy taking a photo of this gentleman who was a real character whilst they're drying their seaweed in the sun. They wanted photos of me, so that's why they were taking, because we were an oddity. And yeah, the kids again, all on their school break. One of the babies that was being held by a woman. You know, we were having a chat with her and she handed me the baby and the baby started screaming. And of course I gave it back, and then she tried again, the baby started screaming. And then one of the doctors on board was explaining that these babies are actually racist babies. So at that age, and it was a real toddler, a real baby, I mean, not a toddler, yeah, they're afraid of people with a different skin colour. So it was freaking out because it was my skin colour that it didn't like. So we had a joke about racist babies. But one of the things you'll see in that photo is the conch shell. So although I didn't get one there, this is my own one, but the conch shells, they use the meat, they eat the meat, and the shell itself is rubbish. So they throw out. So they had a pile of about 3 meters, 4 meters high of these conch shells that were all just used for the meat. So it's really interesting that they were just rubbish to them. And then moving on, you know, again, kids loving the photos and loving to have a chat. And we could see with Jeffrey Malfort doing the translations, we could see and talk to these boat builders that made these boats, and doing it all by hand. It's quite remarkable how they make them. I mentioned Kofra before, Kofra. So this is the ladies cutting them in half, drying them in the sun in order to burn them for fuel. One of the places we went to, they were having a wedding, and so they invited us in to one of the houses that they had decorated for the wedding, as you can see here. So it was really a privilege to come in and see, and we were invited to the wedding. We got there a bit late, but they still sat us down and gave us very sweet hot tea on a hot day and biscuits that they'd been serving to everyone. So it was, again, a real privilege and really unique perspective on their way of life that we got to see, which is really fun. So this is the last slide, and it gives you an idea of our goodbye ceremony in a lot of these places. It was such a wonderful experience, and I have such memories, and I could do much more presentations about it, but I hope that gives you an idea of my trip to the Molucca Sea with Sea Trek Adventures. If you have any questions, let me know, or if you want me to do specific videos about the history of the region or more about what I saw, please let me know. So thanks very much, guys. Have a good day.